When we select in Photoshop, we try to find the easiest way to make a selection. We don't want to spend too much time on it, but we also want to make sure that we are defining edges as accurately as possible. What I have in front of you is an object that I actually had to do for a job years ago. And I was a photo editor for a website, and I was responsible for every single image that went on that website. My job was to select, and it was tedious, and also to knock out backgrounds and fill them with white. So this was a home decor company, and this object is very abstract looking. It is what I'm going to describe as a decorative grass. I'm calling it a grass frond. You would place it, I think, in a vase. So if you ever find yourself as a photo editor, you might have objects presented to you that are really confusing. But I'm going to kind of dissect this image in terms of shape, color, positive space, and negative space. So the object doesn't necessarily have straight lines, and I'm looking at the outer edge. What it does have is complex color inside. It has one color outside, and then it has all this negative space inside. It also has a lot of bends to the object and really delicate tips over here. So I can go to my quick select and see like how good is this one, because I recommend that you try this one first. Maybe just select subject. Oh my gosh, look at that. Well, not so good. So let's see where it didn't do such a great job. So that was quick select and select subject. Zooming in, oof. It's like this weird spider webbing, like it's not getting everything, and it's kind of funky. So zooming back out, I'm using Command or Control 0 to pop this back to being 100%. I think it's just fitting. I think it's fitting screen. Okay. And what I am going to do next is deselect using Command D or Control D on your keyboard. Okay, let's try another method. So the quick select is not going to work, I'll just tell you that right now, because this object is too complex. So the key here is to not select the object. Sometimes selecting the background is the way to go. So if I were to select around the background, it's still having a bit of an issue, but it's way more successful at finding my edges than trying to select this shape and series of colors, because that's way too complex. Okay, my recommendation is going to be underneath the quick select is another tool called the magic wand. The magic wand is an older tool, but it doesn't mean that it's not valid. The magic wand likes to find areas of pixels that are similar to something that you click on. So I'm going to demo it actually on the inside here, and I'm just going with defaults. So my default is the sample size is a point sample. That's fine. Tolerance 32. It's using anti-alias, contiguous, sampling all layers. I only have one layer. Clicking down. Okay. Clicking down. It's adding. I'm just going to choose new for a second. That's the first option here. Clicking down. So every time I click down, it reselects. That's what this new option means. It means let go of the old one, just choose it. This is a new selection. So depending on where I click, it's picking up pixels that are similar to where I'm clicking in the first place. Now that can be really useful, not just for this image, but if I just wanted like one little colored shape in the crowd, then this could be really, really good. Okay. So I already said clicking in here isn't going to be my option. This is easier to select the outside, so I'm going to do that. Clicking down, and look at that. Way better. Okay. It's going to have just a hard time getting into these edges anyway, but I'm going to use this to first demo tolerance and, frankly, point sample. Point sample means one little teeny pixel that you click on. 3x3 and 5x5 are averaging, so instead of saying this really specific value of white, how about we expand it to more areas of white? Usually when I have an option for point sample versus averaging, I choose averaging. And I'll either use a 5x5 or an 11x11. This image is a lower res, so I'm going to go with the 5x5. Normal resolution images that you might be working with, I would go with 11x11. You're not going to hurt anything if you don't remember that. Okay, so I'm going to click down. But I want to demo tolerance. Let's do a really low tolerance. I'm going to choose 5. I'm going to click. Okay, see how it's creating more of a halo? It's not really digging in to the object. So the default is 32, and I actually usually like to start there because it's not doing such a bad job. I'm losing some of this, the tip of the grass, but it's doing a good job at following along the edges here. And if I increase this to like 88, let's see what happens. Oh, not very much. So I'm losing a lot. Yeah, 32 is good. I like it. I'm going to stick with it. Okay. Now let's talk about what is not being selected. So I'm selecting around my object, but it's not getting this stuff in here. These shapes inside. It's not getting those. And that's all about contiguous. So contiguous means that it's actually connected. If you uncheck contiguous, it will find all white in the whole image. Awesome, let's do that. Cool. And it's doing a pretty good job. I mean, it's not grabbing everything. So even though I would love it if this one tool did everything that I wanted it to do, it's kind of missing some stuff. And I would, if I really wanted to be more specific, I'd have to get in there individually maybe. Let's see. What if I were to add to my selection and click in a little bit? This tool right now is a little confusing. Where do I click? Like, is it there on the edge? If you need a precision tool, go to your caps lock and click it, and then you'll get to a crosshairs. And so then that is a more precise tool. Okay, so I just clicked down and then it said, oh, then you want all this other stuff selected? No, undo. I was trying to expand this. Some of it's okay. Some of it's a little wonky, like right here. I don't know about that. Fixing selections under your L or lasso tool. It's the third item down. You can subtract from your selection just by looping around it in areas that you don't think it should be selecting. So if I move around this, some of this stuff looks pretty good. Some of it was selecting in areas that I wasn't too comfortable with. And I'm still lasso and I'm in subtraction mode. So normally with a selection tool, in the option bar, you have a new, an add, and a subtract. Sometimes you might have a third, which is like exclude or intersect. I only use new, add, and subtract. Okay, so then I'm going to subtract this here. It's not really necessary, and oh, I don't know what this is. Maybe I don't want that, and maybe I don't want that. So if I were doing this literally from a product shot, I might want to be a little more specific and maybe start generally, but then I can go in and be a little bit more choosy. Okay, so let's talk about this now on, I'm going to back it out. When you're selecting a background, it can get really confusing about what you're selecting and what you're not selecting. And I tend to get confused a lot with reversals. I get them confused. And keeping this straight, this is how I do it. If I've been working on a background, then I'm going, oh, I've lost a lot of my tip information. Oh my God, that's so annoying. Let me go back to my history. I'm just going to do that. I'm going back because I think when I added to my selection, I literally lost all this stuff. So that was kind of a bummer. Okay. I know that my background is selected because I can see marching ants all the way around the outside of my image. If it looks like this with no marching ants around the outside, that means it's the object that is selected. But in this case, that's not happening. Okay, so here's some options. Menu bar select. When you're selecting, if you forget quick keys, here's deselect, and then there's something called select inverse. And that's what I've been doing to demo just now using my quick keys. It's Shift, and I'm on a Mac, so it's Shift Command I. And if you're on PC, it would be Shift Control I. And that just selects the opposite. You only have one of two options when you're selecting. It's either the object or the background. Okay, let's say you forgot about what you were selecting and you had just selected the background, but that's not really what you want. And I'm recommending that you always go into select and mask. Oh, by the way, if you ever see a feather option here in the option bar, make sure it's 0. This is an old method for feathering. It has its uses sometimes, but it's really destructive. And you can't take it off if it's been applied to your image. So I never use it unless there's like a tutorial online that I'm trying to learn how to do and I need to do a specific thing. And there's only like one thing I've ever done where I would need to change the feathering here. But I am going to tell you, just keep it at 0. Okay, select and mask. All right, so I'm going in here and this is confusing, but so I recommend that you view your object on either white or black. It's easier to see your edges. And that looks kind of cool from a graphic design standpoint, but this is going to really throw you off because the background is white, and if you're viewing it on white, then it's showing an object as white or it's showing the object as black. So if it ever looks really confusing like that, like your object is the thing turning white or black, then you're going to hit invert here in the properties panel. Yay! So that's basically the same as select inverse. So it's inverting. Okay, so now I can get in there and do my magic with my sliders. So yeah, I do want to view this on black because if I view it on white, it's not telling me anything new because the original object was on white. So I do want to view it on black. And really the only thing I want to do is shift my edge in as much as I can. Let's see, it doesn't really do anything. I wish it was like really extreme, but it's not here. Okay. Adding a little bit of feathering, yeah, okay. And then adding a little bit of contrast. It still looks like webbing. Smoothing, not so much, because it's gonna like really accentuate. I shouldn't do that. Kind of freaked out. It's gonna really accentuate the webbing quality, which isn't what I want. Again, I don't like smoothing. I just don't like it. Okay. Not totally perfect. I'm not digging what's really going on there. So I just need to be kind of careful and then kind of understand that maybe this object, you know, if you are shooting for products and you know that it eventually will need to have a white background, you should be shooting it with a white background. This object is really complex. But I think I originally needed it to have as much white as possible, so I just kind of filled it. Outputting. Let's output as new layer with layer mask. And click OK. Yay, there it is. Let's throw in a background for a solid color. And so this object would be kind of, you know, a little bit stuck on what I'd be able to use. But I'm going to kind of show maybe something else that I can do to get away with. If I were to composite with this for a creative project, what could I do? So I'm going with more of like a neutral, darker gray. I'm going to make it a little different than my workspace gray. Using my colorization skills, I can use my eyedropper and sample a green. Yay. And oh, here's this averaging. So 11 by 11 average. I can just click on a green and it's still varying what kind of green I'm choosing, but it's not doing it so much. I can bring up a solid color. Yay, just click OK. I'm saying yay because I'm excited about it. And then I'm actually going to clip this top color layer down to the layer underneath. I could have loaded this mask and then applied the solid color adjustment and they both would have a mask, but this is actually a lot more flexible. If you Option Alt click in between the two layers, see how I'm pointing in between? Option Alt click. Now it's clipping this color to the object underneath, and then I just change it to a blend mode. So color is a good blend mode to use. I can still see that white outlining. Let's try something else. Oh yeah, well, they're all gonna kind of be not totally perfect. Let's try multiply. Yeah, that's okay, I guess. It's not totally perfect, but oh, that one's good. I should probably just go through the list. Remember, using your move tool and Shift plus, you can go through the list and see, well, which one looks best? Remember, I'm a compositing artist, so I like interesting variations. And if I don't like that white outline, like what could I do to kind of get away with it without having to work too hard? So probably up there, ooh, it's very gothy. Up here with my darker was probably a better option. Okay, let's explore another image for selection based on colors. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and convert it to my workspace. All right, this image is another situation where I want to select the trees. And luckily this image has a very consistent blue sky. And all of the tools I've shown so far, like the magic wand and the quick select, just would never work with this image. It wouldn't select the blue and it wouldn't select the trees. I'd be really frustrated. But what I can do is I can select using color range, use the colors here in the background. Actually, there's too many colors in the trees. There's green, there's brown, there's like this white for the highlight, but the blue is more consistent. So I'm going to select based on the blue. And I'm going to unlock that background layer because before I start working, I usually like to do that. Okay, menu bar select, and then you should see color range. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to get this set up. First off, you might be viewing this like this. So here's your image, and then in here you have what's maybe called selection. And I like to flip it around so that this window, which is my canvas, is black and white, and this window is actually my image. It's confusing to describe this right now because I haven't really shown you how it works, but Trust me. Okay, so I'm gonna click image. Okay, so you can click in between. Selection just shows you your image as basically grayscale. Or image is the full color. Selection preview, that's what this is. Do you want to show it as nothing or grayscale or these mattes? I'm going to show it as grayscale. So I just swapped. Before I do that, I think I'm going to select first. This eyedropper, if you drop it down on a color, you're basically selecting that color. I'm going to do that, but I'm doing it right in the middle. So this is actually a gradient. You don't see it that way, but this is a lighter blue and this is a darker blue. So I'm going to click in the middle and then I'll show the selection. Oh, look, there it is. Okay, go back to grayscale. There it is, yay. Okay. And then you can kind of re-click down in certain areas. Okay. Fuzziness. Fuzziness is how much contrast. I kind of wish it would just say contrast. How much contrast are you applying? Okay, all the black areas, that is going to be the selection. So if I go too far, I've introduced gray into my trees. I want a silhouette. I want the trees to be as silhouetted as possible. I want as much black and white between the trees and the sky and not so much gray. There's a little bit of gray here. So I'm trying to find a good balance between them. Okay. Now I'm going back and forth, and if you want to just plug in numbers because you're not really sure what to look for, you can plug in 120 for your fuzziness and then click OK. Now ask yourself, based on where you're seeing the pixels, or I'm sorry, the marching ants, do you think it's the trees that are selected or is it the sky? So look at your edges. If you see marching ants here on the edge where the tree is, then the tree is selected and I don't see it. But I do see it around the blue, which means it's the sky. Okay. Let's go into select and mask. In my option bar, I don't see select and mask. So here's two ways that you can get there. You can get there by the menu for select, and there it is. There's a quick key associated with it. You can choose it from the list. Sometimes I don't like to use lists. So if I just pop over to a selection tool, then I get it. As a button. It all goes to the same place though. Okay, so I'm looking at my sky. It's showing a silhouette of the trees. Remember, use your invert button so that you can swap it. And here we have trees, leaves, and I can see blue. It's kind of coming through some of the leaves because there was a lot of fuzzy edges for these leaves and kind of semi-transparency, but also reflected color. I wasn't really aware of that when I was selecting. So let's see. Actually, I can still see it on black. I'm just going to lower the opacity. I didn't realize that there was so much blue reflected. All right. Here's my recommendation on how to adjust your edges for this image. I wouldn't adjust anything. This image is so complex. I would not use any of these global refinements. No smoothing, feathering, contrast, shifting edge. None of it, because it's going to screw everything up. What I would do is something called decontaminate colors, and that neutralizes any kind of color bleeding or a reflected color. It's contaminated color on your edges. So I'm going to click that. And it's going to ask, well, how much do you want? So I'm going to show without very much. That's what I normally do when I'm trying to put something on. and then demo what it looks like as I remove things. Now I'm going to get really heavy-handed and say, I want a lot taken out. Okay, it's neutralizing it. It's like it's taking it to more of a gray scale, or it's kind of white balancing it. When you output, you won't have as many options. You won't be able to output as selection or as layer mask. Honestly, my recommendation is that you just output as new layer without a mask, and then click OK. You'll be able to slip in any kind of solid color. It's remembering what color I originally selected. That looks kind of good, but I'm gonna try a different one. A sci-fi. Is it sci-fi? Normally I would say it's Mars, but that actually looked like California. Oh, kind of sad and depressing. But this is what I'm using to analyze how well I was able to select, and I am digging it. So I'm pretty happy about it. It was complex. Some of this maybe, you know, it does feel a little on the harsh side, but seriously, I don't think feathering my selections was a way to go at all. I always recommend that you test it and you try things out. Even though I might suggest something, you should try for yourself. And then this one can be saved, and I can use this and composite underneath, put objects on top. It's ready to go.